Hi, welcome to Classic Blade Review. For our first review, I thought it would only be right to start off with what's pretty much known as the grandfather of folding hunting knives, that of course being the Buck 110. For those of you who are sort of new to knife collecting, or you may not know a whole bunch about pocket knives and folding knives. The Buck 110's been around since 1964, and in 1964, Buck really revolutionized the folding knife, hunting knife industry. Prior to that, hunting knives were pretty much just not folding blades, but just fixed blades, and Buck came out with this, with the 110, which gave a really functional, high-quality folding hunting knife, something that was substantial enough to dress a deer or any other game that you might find. So since 1964, Buck has been producing these knives, and other knife companies have sort of followed suit and have used this knife, the Buck 110, as the standard. Now, as a kid, when I was growing up in the 80s, every kid wanted a Buck 110. If you didn't have a Buck 110 on your side, you wanted one. Owning a Buck 110 was sort of a rite of passage to young manhood when I was a kid in the 80s. So I thought it'd be right to just do a quick overview of this knife, though you can find plenty of great reviews on this knife all over the internet. I thought I would, starting off this new channel, would only be right by starting off with this knife. Now the blade on the Buck knife, as far as size, some of the specs, the blade is 3 3/4 inches long, and the knife itself, when it's closed, is 4 7/8 inch long. And it's important to know because in some states and in some areas in some states, there's real legal restrictions on the size of blade of knife that you can have with you on your side. So you want to look that up if you're a new knife collector. See what your local area, what's legal. You just don't want to get in trouble for carrying the wrong size blade. But so it's a sizable knife. Some folks call it an EDC or an everyday carry knife. I think it's a bit too large and a little too heavy for that. The knife itself is generally anywhere between 7.2 and 7.5 ounces. So that's a pretty heavy, bulky knife. Almost a half pound when you think about it. So I don't know that I would consider this an everyday carry knife. I've got smaller pocket knives that I use for that. But the handle on this knife is now this one in particular. It's an African Ebony all wood handle. Now Buck, over the years, they started out the knife as being an all wood handle, and over the years they've gone back and forth with wood and resin infused wood. I think they called it the diamond wood at one time, and then and the benefit of a resin infused wood was that it wouldn't shrink or bloat with humidity. But in 2019, Buck went back with their standard issued 110, offering it as a solid African ebony wood. And that's what I've got here. This is a standard Buck knife, no customization, but this knife is from 2021. So it's the new model, so it's got the all African ebony wood handle. It's got, of course, the typical standard brass bolsters and brass pins you can see there, with the exception of the one stainless steel pin for the lock blade. So it's an attractive knife. What's interesting is it's a newer knife for me, and so it's still sort of working out some of the grit from the factory. You can kind of see some of that on there. Some of that black on the bottom is just grit that I'm trying to work out of the knife. I've got to oil it. But other than that, I'm really pleased with this knife. I think it's very attractive. It's very quality. It's a lock blade. So when it's in place, you don't have to worry about the knife closing on you. Now, for a knife collector, that noise is something really special. sort of like the crack of a bat for Major League fans. So that's kind of the knife in a nutshell. Now a little bit more about the blade, I guess. The blade on the standard Buck 110 is a 420 HC or high carbon blade, and some folks frown on that because it's a softer steel blade. But what I've heard from others is that the steel or the blade on your knife is only as good as the heating treatment, and Buck has a superior heating treatment. For all their knives, including the Buck 110, it's the Paul Boss heating treatment. And the heating treatment just meaning the way they fire the steel, the way they heat it and then cool it and then heat it and cool it. And it has to do with the hardening of the knife. So though the 420 is a softer steel, the way it's treated is superior. So not a lot of worries about that steel. Although I guess it does make it vulnerable to maybe chipping. I know some of the Buck knives. Their standard Buck knife has a clip point as opposed to a drop point. And I've seen some blades that have broken or cracked, especially in the tip. And what's really great about all Buck knives is they have what they call a forever warranty on their knives. It used to be a lifetime warranty, but then what they found out was that more often than not, the knife itself actually outlived the purchaser or the owner of the knife. So they went from a lifetime warranty to a forever warranty, meaning whoever found themselves with this particular knife in their possession. Often these knives are handed down just because of the durability of the knife. Fathers will hand them down to sons and daughters or granddaughters and grandsons. So no matter how old the knife is, it's still under a forever warranty with Buck. They're really good at honoring that, whether it be cleaning it up or fixing it or replacing it. So that is a huge plus when it comes to Buck knives. I will say this is just your standard Buck 110. Now you can customize almost any knife with Buck, but especially the 110, where you can actually order particular types of wood, whether it be walnut or cherry, rather than the African Ebony that it comes with. So you can customize the wood on your handle. You can customize your bolsters. These are, of course, brass bolsters, but you can customize for stainless steel. And you can actually customize your steel on your blade if you would prefer a different hardened type of steel. It's probably cost you a little bit more, but Buck's website can really help you out with that. Now, this also the one thing about the Buck 110 on the blade, it's got what it's called a hollow grind blade, meaning it's the way it's ground, the way it's sharpened, it comes to it's tapered off down at the point. Or down at the blade at the bottom of the blade, so it's a hollow grind. Of course, the Buck 110, as with almost all Buck knives, is actually made in the USA. If you look at in the blade, it'll say it. I'll try to get that on the camera there. It probably is looking backwards to you, but you've got the Buck 110 made in the USA. And what's also, if you're curious about, maybe you've got a Buck knife in your collection, maybe you inherited it, or maybe you bought it many, many years ago. There's an easy way to tell how old your Buck knife is or when it was manufactured. If you look at your blade bottom here, open it up, and you look underneath the Buck, there is going to be you can see like a little symbol there next to the 110. And Buck has a chart where that symbol next to the 110 indicates a year, the year that the knife was manufactured. So I think what I'm going to do is in the comment or subject matter below, I'm going to put a link to one of those charts so that you can look up your Buck knife to see what year that yours was made. Just a quick story about the Buck knife that I find interesting. There's a man, I forget his name, I believe it's Gene Moe or something along that line, but quite a while ago he was there's a story about he was hunting. I think it might have been Alaska. I'll actually put a link again to a interview with him in the subject matter below. But he had shot and killed a deer, and while he was dressing the deer out, while he was gutting it, he had gotten away from his rifle. He just had his buck 110 on him. A Kodiak bear snuck up on him and attacked him. So it's an interesting account where Gene is sort of wrestling, and he actually punches the bear at one point, and the bear falls back a little bit. So Gene must have had quite a punch. But then, of course, the bear attacks him again, and Gene is nearly killed. He loses a lot of his flesh, but with the buck 110, he fought the bear, and through cutting him and stabbing him in the neck and the throat in the different places, Gene actually kills the Kodiak bear with this buck 110 knife, which is pretty incredible. It's an interesting interview. I'm going to put a link to that below. But just real quick too, along with when you purchase the buck 110, which costs typically generally around $50, you're getting quite a knife for $50. It can be purchased on Amazon, or here in the U.S., it can be purchased in any normal, like Home Depot, Menards, Walmarts, whatever store, just sort of general stores carry these knives. It's generally around $50. Sometimes you can find them on sale for even less. Not only do you get this high quality, made in the USA, durable folding hunting knife, classic, a legendary hunting knife, but it comes with an all leather black buck sheath. You can see where it's stamped buck on the top there. It's got the buck button to close the sheath. Now, it is all leather, and though the knife is made in the USA, the sheath is actually made in Mexico. It is a very high-quality sheath still. One of the complaints that folks do have, that I guess has changed over the years when it comes to these sheaths, is that the way, if you're using the sheath, the way it loops into your belt, and the way the knife is, it rides pretty high on your belt, which a lot of EDC or knife carriers aren't huge fans of. Where they prefer the sheath to ride a little bit lower so it doesn't dig into their side, but it does ride a little bit high. But it is a very high quality sheath that I think will last you a long time. So that's a quick look at the Buck 110, made in the USA. Original folding hunting knife, sort of the grandfather of all hunting knives. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stick around for more knives. What I'm going to do is a quick overview and look at different knives that are in my collection. I hope you're having a great day, and we'll see you again soon.